The sound of missiles and explosions were heard across Gaza this morning as after 4 weeks, the fragile ceasefire there was broken by a major Israeli bombardment. The attack killed more than 400 people inside the territory, according to the Hamas-run health ministry, and it has provoked fury from some inside Israel, not least the families of hostages still waiting to be released. Our international affairs analyst, Raghi Omar, is here. Raghi, the ceasefire had been holding. Some hostages had been freed. Why has Israel done this now?
Well, Mary, in the 162 days since the October 7th attacks, the Prime Minister Netanyahu's government, and in fact the whole of Israel to its core, have been facing two contradictory war aims in this whole conflict. One is the total eradication and destruction of Hamas, the dismantling of their rule, not just the dismantling of their rule, but their ability to even exist. Now, that's war aim number one. War aim number two, of course, has been the return of all the hostages, hundreds of them. I think there are around 59 remaining. Whether they're alive or whether they're dead and their bodies, the main goal of all Israeli society, left and right, is the return of all the hostages. Now, it's a binary choice because you can't have the two, because if you're going to get the hostages back, you're going to have to do a deal with someone in Gaza that has got a coherent governance, that is able to gather all the hostages through the International Committee of the Red Cross and hand them back to Israel. And that means, of course, having to deal with Hamas. Now, the ceasefire came into effect on January the 19th in order for that to happen. And in some ways, the ceasefire was an acknowledgement by Israel that Hamas still exists. And that's the problem. So when the ceasefire came into existence, it's been around a month, Israel says that Hamas has been reconstituting itself, using the pause in the fighting to rearm, regroup, find a new leadership to replace those that were killed. And it was reaching a point, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says, where Hamas now posed as much a danger now as it did in October the 7th, and hence the release of this huge airstrikes, the largest certainly in about a month and a half. So that's the reason behind it. You have to deal with Hamas, but you don't want them to be strong enough to reconstitute under the ceasefire, so therefore strike and take them back to where they were.
It was a pretty big strike, wasn't it? And the casualty figures are alarming. What has been the effect on the ground?
Well, it's been a huge... Don't forget, I mean, this is the sort of fasting Muslim holy month of Ramadan, so people were probably waking up for their sort of dawn prayers where these huge sort of airstrikes sort of happened. The Hamas-run health ministry says around 400 people were killed, as you had said. Now, this includes Mahmoud Abu Wafa, who is the Deputy Interior Minister of Gaza, the most senior surviving Hamas official, and about 3 other senior Hamas officials there. Israel said it was not just attacking Hamas weapon sites, but also command and control centers, and also degrading its ability to launch further strikes into Israel. And in fact, we were able to speak to an aid worker on the ground in Gaza, Rachel Cummings, from Save the Children Fund just a couple of hours ago, and this is what she told us.
People are absolutely devastated. There was some hope. People had a degree of hope, however fragile that ceasefire and that pause in hostilities was. People had hope that it would last. And now that hope seems to be fading very, very quickly.
Now, the other thing is we have to sort of bear in mind that these airstrikes are not there just to punish Hamas, but it's to send a clear political message. These airstrikes have a political purpose. Because what Prime Minister Netanyahu wants is not just this painful issue for Israel of the remaining 50 or so hostages staying in Gaza. They want what he calls a once and for all deal, right? A ceasefire, that allows all of the hostages to be released in one go. Now, I can't see Hamas doing that because the hostages are the greatest political and strategic leverage that they have over Israel. They want to have a pause, resume the fighting, have a pause, resume the fighting, and so forth, until they're able to rebuild themselves within Gaza. And this whole issue of the hostages burst into the open today in the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, where families of those held hostage went out onto the floor of the Knesset, as you're seeing of this woman, berating one of the key far-right allies of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Shmuel Smotrich, who was there. And in fact, to the outrage of those on the left, he said, look, to the families, look, we've heard enough of you. We've heard a lot about you. You know, can we get on with our sort of business, which was not quite sort of, in some ways, sort of diplomatic. So this is really a domestic political issue for Netanyahu as much as it is a regional one as well.
But it's not just within the region, is it? Because there are ramifications far beyond as well.
Huge ramifications. I mean, starting with here, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy in Parliament said that by withholding aid getting into Gaza, he said it's been 15 days since aid had got through to Gaza. Israel was breaking humanitarian law. He said that the airstrikes and the civilian casualties, human casualties were appalling. So very, very strong words. And what this does is it sort of brings out into the open the continuing international divisions within sort of major powers. Now, the US, the UK and the Europeans are still on the line that Israel has the right to defend itself. The problem is they have varying opinions about how Israel is going about doing that. Now, David Lammy was slightly wrapped across the knuckles by Number 10, who rode back and sort of said, look, we're not a court of law. It's for the international courts to decide if Israel is breaking humanitarian law. So, and at the same time, we have also had the release in Parliament on the same day, the parliamentary report or commission on October the 7th. And in it, actually, the 18th British victim of October the 7th was named, Miss Calderon, Heidi Calderon, who is a 66-year-old dual British passport holder. So it does sort of bring it back home in many sort of ways here. But of course, the ultimate arbiter of all this in terms of the international actors is the United States. And I don't see anything to suggest that Donald Trump's administration is 100% behind Israel and behind the actions of Prime Minister Netanyahu.
OK. Raghi Omar, thank you.